California isn't all surf in Silicon Valley. It's a place where the ground tears open without warning, where gold rush towns still hold the bones of men who died for someone else's fortune, and where whole communities were wiped off the map so quietly that almost nobody remembers they existed. Today, we're counting down 20 of the most unusual towns in the Golden State Places. Only about 1% of people have ever heard of, ranked from merely strange, all the way down to genuinely unforgettable. Number 20. There's a town on the California coast with a population of 18 people. Not 1818. Harmony, tucked along Highway 1 near Cambria, began life in the late 1800s as a dairy farming community. Then the creamery shut down, the people drifted away, and the buildings simply stayed. Today, it still technically functions, with its own zip code, a glass-blowing studio, a pottery shop, and a little wedding venue. But the unsettling thing about Harmony isn't dramatic, it's the stillness. A single street so quiet it feels like a stage set waiting for actors who never showed up. Number 19. There's a town in California that once seceded from the United States. In April of 1850, the mining settlement of Rough and Ready, in Nevada County, got so fed up with federal mining taxes that its miners voted to leave the Union, entirely declaring the Great Republic of Rough and Ready, and even electing a president. The breakaway nation lasted about 3 months, collapsing when residents realized that, having left the country, they couldn't legally buy alcohol for the 4th of July. They rejoined immediately. But underneath the comedy is a harder history, a gold rush settlement where claim disputes were settled with guns, and the town still marks its strange secession every year. Number 18. There's a gold rush town in California that time forgot, and it's called Volcano. Sitting in Amador County with a population of around 100, Volcano once held 5,000 people at its 1850s peak. This tiny place claims an outsized list of California firsts, an early lending library, a private law school, and an astronomical observatory. There's even a Civil War-era cannon named Old Abe that Union loyalists hid in a cellar. Then the gold ran out, and Volcano slipped into a strange suspended state, not quite a ghost town, not quite alive. The historic hotel here has drawn reports of cold spots and unexplained happenings going back decades, the kind of stories a town this still seems to attract. Number 17. There's a logging town in California that sits in the shadow of one of the most mythologized mountains in America. Weed, in Siskiyou County, rests at the foot of Mount Shasta, a peak held sacred for thousands of years by native peoples, including the Wintu and the Shasta. Towering and solitary, Shasta has long drawn a reputation in spiritual circles as a place of unusual energy, and it's been a hotspot for reported strange lights and UFO sightings going back the better part of a century. Weed itself has a hard logging past of mill accidents and fires, but the eeriest thing about it is simply what it stands beneath. Some landscapes just carry weight, and Shasta carries more than most. Number 16. There's a charming little mountain town near San Diego famous for apple pie, with a much darker story underneath. Julian is all Victorian storefronts, cider mills, and autumn leaves, the two things San Diego County otherwise lacks. What the tourist brochures skip is what happened in the 1870s when the gold ran out. Chinese laborers who helped build Julian's infrastructure were legally barred from owning mining claims under California's discriminatory foreign miners tax. They worked land they could never own, then had no recourse when the work vanished. The history of those communities is sparsely recorded, which is its own kind of answer, and the town's old cemetery holds many graves simply marked unknown. Number 15. There's a perfectly preserved Victorian ghost town hiding at the end of a canyon trail outside Los Angeles, and almost nobody knows it's there. Mentryville, in Pico Canyon, was California's first oil boomtown. Built in 1875 around Pico No. 4, a well that ran continuously for decades, one of the longest-lived oil wells in the world. When the oil company finally pulled out, it left nearly everything standing. The manager's mansion, the one-room schoolhouse with its original chalkboard, the worker housing. Hikers who reached the end of the trail described the same jolt, a normal canyon. And then suddenly an entire Victorian town materializing out of the trees, with the overwhelming sense that everyone just stepped out for lunch. Number 14. There's a town on the Sacramento Delta that feels frozen a century in the past. Isleton sits on a delta island, reached by a bridge that feels a generation out of date. Its main street, a single block of buildings from the 1910s and 20s facades maintained, interiors mostly emptied. It was once a thriving hub of Chinese and Japanese immigrant communities. Then, during World War II, Japanese American residents were forcibly removed to internment camps. Businesses closed overnight, and families who'd built lives here over generations were simply gone in days. The community that returned was smaller and never fully recovered. Today, the wide brown river slides past, and the town feels like the rest of the world is hurrying somewhere more important. Number 13. There's a gold rush town that calls itself the Queen of the Sierra, and it has the guest list to back it up. Murphy's, in Calaveras County, has a beautifully preserved downtown, packed on weekends with wine tasting rooms and bed and breakfasts. Its centerpiece, the Murphy's Hotel, was built in 1856 and has operated continuously for nearly 170 years. The register reportedly includes Ulysses S. Grant, Mark Twain, and Black Bart, the outlaw who robbed stagecoaches and left behind scraps of poetry at the scene. A hotel running that long accumulates a lot of history, and the staff have logged unexplained happenings in its upper rooms for decades. Number 12. There's a town of about 200 people in the Bay Area that operates entirely by its own logic. Port Costa sits on the Carquinez Strait, where ships pass between the Delta and San Francisco Bay. In the 1880s, it was one of the busiest grain shipping ports in the world. Then the railroad rerouted everything, and Port Costa went very, very quiet. Today, its centerpiece is a hotel bar, covered floor to ceiling in hundreds of taxidermy animals, every surface crowded with bears, elk, and birds. Locals don't seem to find this strange at all. One travel writer described the whole place as feeling like somewhere it's perpetually 1987, and everyone's perfectly fine with that. Number 11. There's a town that was briefly California's de facto first capital, and now it's a row of roofless brick shells. Old Shasta was the commercial heart of the Northern Gold Rush, the point through which nearly all of Northern California's supplies once flowed. Then the railroad bypassed it in 1872, and within a decade the population collapsed. What remains is preserved as a state historic park. Empty windowed brick facades, a restored courthouse, and the original gallows still intact in the courthouse basement, the trapdoors still working. Volunteers who staff the site report footsteps in empty rooms and cold spots in the old holding cells, the kind of place that, standing among the ruins, somehow feels occupied. Number 10. There's a gold mining ghost town in the Mojave Desert where you can still order a milkshake. Randsburg is that rare living ghost town, a few dozen year-round residents, a weekend saloon and general store, occupied houses scattered among the abandoned ones. Gold was struck here in 1895, and by 1900 it held thousands of people, hotels, and a church. By the 1940s, the gold and most of the people were gone. What makes Randsburg genuinely unsettling rather than just photogenic is the interior's many abandoned buildings still hold the furniture and belongings of the people who left, preserved by the dry desert air. They don't look abandoned so much as paused, with the wind sliding through the boards. Number 9. There's a town in the Sacramento Delta built entirely by Chinese immigrants, because the law gave them no other choice. Locke was founded in 1915, after Chinese laborers, legally barred from owning land in California and excluded from living in the neighboring town, built a community of their own on leased ground. At its peak, it held over 600 people, with its own school, restaurants, and businesses. Today the population is under 100, and most of the buildings stand empty, the old storefronts leaning slightly. Walking Locke's main street at dusk produces something that isn't quite fear, it's closer to grief. The architecture of people who built something remarkable under conditions designed to stop them, and did it anyway. Number 8. There's a town in California that looks like the surface of another planet. Trona sits at the edge of a dry lake bed in the Mojave, home to around 1,700 people and one enormous chemical plant that the entire town exists to serve. The landscape is a white, mineral-crusted flat ringed by jagged volcanic rock. Just outside town rise the Trona pinnacles, hundreds of strange calcium carbonate spires that formed underwater tens of thousands of years ago. So otherworldly they've stood in for alien worlds in films like Star Trek and Planet of the Apes. Standing among them brings a kind of geological vertigo, a sense of time so vast it makes human presence feel almost irrelevant. Number 7. There's a silver mining ghost town in the Mojave so eerie that turning it into a tourist attraction didn't fix it. Calico, near Barstow, struck silver in 1881 and boomed to thousands of people, producing a fortune in ore before the silver market crashed in the 1890s and emptied the town within a couple of years. In the 1950s, the founder of Knott's Berry Farm bought it, restored part of it, and donated it to the county. But the line between original and reconstructed is genuinely blurry in places, and investigators consistently say the original structures, the mine tunnels, and the cemetery on the hill carry a quality the rebuilt sections simply don't. Number 6. There's a place at the end of a long desert road with a name deliberately invented to be the last word in the dictionary. Zizix sits 12 miles off the interstate in the Mojave, the creation of a man named Curtis Howe Springer, who built an unlicensed health resort on federal land in 1944 and ran it for 30 years without permission. He sold miracle tonics over the radio, claimed a medical degree that records suggest he never held, and built a hotel, a pool, and a chapel on land the government didn't realize was being used. He was finally evicted in the 1970s. The buildings survive today as a desert research station, and visitors often describe Zizix as the rare place in the Mojave that feels less empty than simply watched. Number 5. There's a town in California founded as a place where Black Americans could govern themselves completely, and it was quietly strangled. Colonel Allen Allensworth was born into slavery in 1842 and rose to become one of the highest-ranking black officers in the U.S. Army. In 1908, he founded a township in the Central Valley built and controlled entirely by its black residents, free of any white-owned infrastructure or authority. It thrived for a few years, raising a school, a library, and a hotel. Then the water supply faltered as the underground water table was diverted to neighboring farms. The railroad bypassed the town, and in 1914, Allensworth himself was killed by a motorcycle while crossing a street. Today, it's a state historic park restored, preserved, and quiet with the specific grief of potential interrupted. Number 4. There's a ghost town perched at 9,000 feet that helped build the city of Los Angeles, and today it has exactly one resident. Cerro Gordo, high in the Inyo Mountains, struck silver in 1865 and within 2 years was producing more of it than almost any mine in California. So much wealth flowed down the mountain by mule train that early Los Angeles grew rich partly on this single peak. When the ore ran out, the town was abandoned at altitude and the cold, dry, isolated air preserved it almost perfectly. The bunkhouses, the assay office, the saloon, all still standing. In 2018, a man named Brent Underwood bought the entire town and moved in alone, documenting his discoveries, including, he reported, unmapped sections of the mine. He's still up there, the town's lone living resident. Number 3. There's a town sitting on the shore of a sea that was created entirely by accident. The Salton Sea was born in 1905, when an irrigation canal failed and the Colorado River poured into a dry desert basin for nearly 2 years, forming California's largest lake. By the 1950s, its shores were a glamorous resort. Frank Sinatra came, the beaches buzzed. Then agricultural runoff drove the salinity past that of the ocean. The fish died off by the millions, and the resorts emptied. Bombay Beach, the lowest community in the United States at over 200 feet below sea level, is the last inhabited town on that eastern shore. A few hundred people living among salt-crusted ruins now reclaimed by artists who've turned the wreckage into surreal sculpture. It's beautiful and devastated. At the same time, impossible to look away from. Number 2. There's a place in California where the deadliest homefront disaster of the Second World War unfolded in a single instant, and almost nobody knows its name. On July 17th of 1944, munitions being loaded at the Port Chicago Naval Magazine detonated in a blast so enormous it registered on distant seismographs and was felt 20 miles away in San Francisco. 320 men were killed instantly, the vast majority of them, black sailors, assigned to dangerous loading work under white officers, with little training. When the survivors were ordered straight back to the same conditions, 50 of them refused, and the Navy charged them with mutiny, a case the young Thurgood Marshall condemned as a racially motivated injustice. They were convicted, and only in 2024, 80 years later, did the Navy finally exonerate them. The site is a national memorial now, and rangers say its weight doesn't lift when you leave the parking lot. Number 1. There's a ghost town in California so perfectly frozen in time that its caretakers invented a brand new term just to describe it: arrested decay. Bodie isn't restored and isn't demolished, it's simply held in the exact state of deterioration it had reached when the last residents walked out. The furniture still in the houses, the dishes still in the cupboards. Founded in 1859 after gold was struck high in the eastern Sierra, it exploded to nearly 10,000 people, with dozens of saloons and a murder rate newspapers of the day called one of the worst in California. Its namesake, W.S. Bodie, died in a blizzard the very winter he found the gold, and never saw the town that took his name. Today, it sits at over 8,000 feet, weathered silver gray, watched over by rangers who live among the empty buildings. And there's a strange epilogue. For decades, visitors who pocketed souvenirs, a nail, a shard of glass, have mailed them back, with letters insisting their luck went bad the moment they took them. The rangers can't even return the objects to where they came from anymore. They just keep arriving, year after year, from people who swear they never believed in any curse. So, which of these 20 places would you actually dare to visit? Drop it in the comments, and subscribe, because next time we go somewhere you won't expect.